Hey everyone, so before I get started, I'd like to ask you to do me a solid favor. That's like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, and share the video. Also, click on the links in the description. You can find my content elsewhere outside of YouTube by doing so. You can find me at all your favorite audio and video podcast affiliates like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and to an extent, SiriusXM. You can also find me at other video outlets like Rumble, Dailymotion, Odyssey, and Vimeo. You can also find me on DeviantArt. That's right, on DeviantArt. You can find me at DeviantArt at BVW1979, BVW1979 at DeviantArt.com. You can also find me at InkBunny, that's INKBUNNY.net. That's InkBunny.net at BWRoses, and at For Affinité at BW1979. I also have a Patreon, guys. If you want to go help support me there, it'd be greatly appreciated. As I've alluded to before in the recent update, I will be going to that probably a lot more, especially as we head to the Christmas vacation season. So get ready to check that out before anyone else can see material here on YouTube. You can check it out over there on YouTube. Now, with that said, I also have a Cash App and a Venmo if you want to help support me there, especially during this time of Christmas, so I can have a little finances on the side for gift getting and all that. Let me know what you can do. If you can do it, that'd be greatly appreciated. Also, guys, I'm trying to get the right words here. I have a Fourth Wall store and a Teespring store. Fourth Wall store has the link at the top, and the Teespring store link is at the bottom. Both are in the description. Also, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to do so, you can follow me on social media at TikTok, at Twitter, aka X.com, and Blue Sky. You can follow me there as well if you want to do so. Also, guys, you can find me. I think that's about it. I'm not really sure. I don't think I've left anything out here. If I did, it should be linked there in the description. Also, guys, what I'm trying to say is you can also chime in during the live chat if you want to, during the live video premiere. And if you feel like being in the mood to be generous and all that, you can also chime in with SuperChats. SuperChats would be greatly appreciated if you could do that, if you want to. Also, guys, the comment section will be open on both occasions, live video premiere and afterwards. And also, if you want to donate, if you feel like doing so, you can do so with the Super Thanks button, which is a little heart with a dollar sign. Also, oh yeah, this is what I was trying to say. I almost lost my train of thought there earlier. You can also click on the affiliated stores that will be listed if you want to basically look into something for Christmas for yourself or a family member, or just decoration or whatever. You can go to the affiliated stores that will be listed. It helps you out, it helps the store out, and it helps me out via commission. And so with that said, hopefully I got everything this time. Let's get on to the topic at hand. Alright, so we know that bowl season, as controversial as this bowl season has been, and it hasn't even started with a single bowl yet, it officially starts this Saturday. In addition of the Army-Navy game, we will also have the Celebration Bowl and the LA Bowl. So those will be the bowl games to start off the bowl season, I should say, along with Army and Navy, who will also be in a bowl game later this month as well. They'll be in two separate bowl games, if you will. As a matter of fact, Navy will be in one of the first few bowl games of 2026, basically on January 2nd, while Army will be in one, I think, on the 30th or 29th. I have to double check. It should be listed in the short video I put showing the bowl schedule, and also while I'm talking about it as well. But speaking of bowl games, we know that throughout the history of these college bowl games around this time of year, that basically a lot of bowl games have come and gone. A lot have, basically continued on for the longest of times, like the Orange and the Rose, you name it. They have basically endured. They have endured for the longest time. The Sun Bowl has endured for the longest time. The Holiday Bowl, the Gator Bowl have all endured, throughout these past several decades, if not half a century, if not more than half a century. But unfortunately, there are bowl games that do disappear, or they disappear and evolve into something more. They create a legacy that gets carried on. Now, when I was talking about the bowl games and everything, there were two bowl games essentially that, in a way, I felt carried the legacy of one bowl game separately. They both shared it. to an extent. That would be the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, which is going to be which is continuing on this year. Used to go under different names like the Humanitarian Bowl and whatnot. And the Las Vegas Bowl, which is going to be one of the final bowl games of December. Now, what's interesting about both of those, and mostly the Las Vegas Bowl, is the Las Vegas Bowl mostly, we'll focus on that here, is basically it evolved from a previous bowl game. A bowl game that basically went for about a decade, if you will. And if I wanted to go see a bowl game in person, back then, had I been the age I am now and everything back then and had license and all that, or bus fare, whatever, whatever you want, or however you want to look at it, excuse me. If I wanted to do all that, and I wanted to see a bowl game which was basically within my region, especially according to zip codes, if you will. If I wanted to see a bowl game within my region, back then, if I was the age I am now back then, or whatever, then I would have gone to Fresno, California. That's right. Because basically in the 1980s up to the beginning of the 1990s, there was a bowl game that kicked off the bowl season. Now the difference though is it was not on some of the linear cable networks or broadcast networks, if you will, at the time. I mean, they were on, they were on television, don't get me wrong, but they were more on, basically syndication or the syndicated affiliated sports channel stations. In other words, sports channel, even though it was its own channel for a while, basically sports channel also would be distributed to syndicated over-the-air stations. And even if you had cable, you'd still get it and everything, but it would be through one of the syndicated stations it would be affiliated with. The same with another one that came before it or after it, and that was Raycom. Yeah, Raycom and Sports Channel were kind of like that, little stepchild, if you will, that, you knew was there, but you didn't really pay too much attention to due to the fact that, basically you didn't know what its primary channel was, and the only affiliation, or the only knowledge that you knew about its existence, I should say, is through its affiliation to syndication. That's mainly what those two channels were like, or networks were like, if you will. But anyway, basically, Sports Channel, and even before it, Raycom, and after it, Raycom, I should say, before and after, in between, if you will, they had the privilege of kicking off the college bowl season with several bowls, but more specifically a bowl game that basically, when it began, you knew about it, but sometimes you wouldn't know where to find it because, again, you wouldn't know whether or not it was just going to be specifically on the sports cable channel or if it was going to be basically simulcast onto the other, like I said, syndicated networks, over-the-air syndicated networks. And that bowl game was the California Bowl, or as it would be known later on as the California Raisin Bowl. Now what's interesting about this bowl game is, just like with the Myrtle Beach Bowl this year, it involved two conference champions. That's right, it involved two conference champions. This year the Myrtle Beach Bowl involves basically Kennesaw State, the Conference USA champions, and the MAC champions, Western Michigan. And I bring that up because of the similarity. It's a small bowl game, mostly going to be played during the day. It's going to be basically on the, on the campus of Coastal Carolina, as far as I know. And essentially, Coastal Carolina's field is one of the more as far as I know, unless they do it this year, but the last time I checked, it's one of the non-interchangeable fields, if you will, to where when you go onto that field, you're just basically playing on a neutral surface with no, with acknowledgement of whose actual home turf it is. If that made any sense. But that's basically what the Myrtle Beach Bowl is. Unless they do make a change this year, which would be huge, and I think, for the benefit, which would be, for the positive beneficiary of the future of that bowl game, then yeah, basically you're just playing on the surface, not surface, but on the turf of another school where basically you know who that school is. But that's the similarity, though. The similarity is it's hosting two conference champions from middle tier schools. And you would think they'd take more pride in that by saying, well, these two are champions, let's put them in prime time. They're not going to do that. But that's kind of what the California Bowl was like. The California Bowl was essentially in that same way. And again, it would be shown on Sports Channel and Raycom channels, or the Raycom channel, and the syndicated affiliated broadcast partners. It would be shown on those, networks, if you are syndicated, if not primarily on their own channels. But here's the thing. Like I said, but here's the thing. Like I said, just like the Myrtle Beach Bowl, it's only seen during the day and potentially at a time when not a lot of people will tune in. Thankfully, nowadays, we have outlets like the ESPN app, which allow us to catch up on those bowl games that we missed, maybe because we're working or we're in school, whatever. But back then, we didn't get a chance to do that. What we had to do is know how to set a timer on a freaking VCR and go from there, or just basically put the tape in there, set it to record while we're gone, and hoping and praying it does get not just the unnecessary program we don't want, but it gets us the bowl game, if that makes any sense. But yeah, the California Bowl, the California Raisin Bowl, was around for about a decade. Now, there was a Raisin Bowl back in the 40s and everything, but it had no 40s and 50s, but no association, no legacy, lineage, if you will, to this one. This one, though, like I said, has a legacy and lineage connected to today's Las Vegas Bowl, which began back in 1992. And we see how far that's evolved. Like I said, it's on one of the last days of this year of December, if you will, and it's got two big time schools, as a part of it, that being Nebraska and Utah. So shows you how far it's really grown and evolved, if you will. But what is this game, if you will? What is this game? Well, let's look into it. Let's talk about it, shall we? In fact, I got the information here, so you can hopefully read along and everything as I post it on the page. Alright, so basically, what is the California Bowl? Well, according to Google and a lot of information it comes out with, this is what it says. The California Bowl, later renamed the California Raisin Bowl due to a sponsorship deal, was a postseason college football game held annually in Fresno, California from 1981 to 1991. It featured conference champions from the Big West Conference, formerly the Pacific Coast Athletic Association, Pacific Coast Athletic Association, and the Mid-American Conference, the MAC. So essentially, like I said, very similar to what the Myrtle Beach Bowl is doing. Now, its history goes like this. Establishment. The bowl game began in 1981 at Bulldog Stadium on the campus of Fresno State. It was generally the first bowl game of the postseason and one of the first bowls to rely heavily on cable television marketing. Sponsorship. In 1988, the California Raisin... In 1988, the California Raisin Advisory Board purchased the naming rights and the event became known as the California Raisin Bowl. The sponsorship leveraged the popularity of the California Raisins claymation advertisement campaign that was a national phenomenon in the late 80s. Participants. The game primarily matched the champions of the Big West, or before that, the PCAA, which was again the Pacific Coast Athletic Conference. The game would primarily match up the champion of the Big West / PACC, Pacific Coast Athletic Association, and the MAC conferences. Fresno State played in its home stadium, was a frequent and successful participant, playing in 5 of the 11 games and winning 4 of them. A notable game occurred in 1982 when Fresno State mounted a dramatic fourth quarter comeback to win 29-28 over Bowling Green. Alright, here's where it gets interesting. Demise and relocation. The bowl was dealt a major blow when Fresno State moved to the Western Athletic Conference in 1992. Without a consistent anchor team, and unable to find new sponsor or meet fundraising goals, the game lost its NCAA certification. The MAC and the Big West conferences moved the Italian to Las Vegas, Nevada, and the game was effectively succeeded by the Las Vegas Bowl starting in 1992. So yeah, basically, this game went on for about a decade. This game went on for about a decade, and again, what was interesting about it is the fact that, well, essentially it kicked off the bowl season. Nowadays, especially with the invent of the college football playoff and stuff and all that, a lot of bowl games have been moved up to basically be sharing the kickoff duties to the bowl season, even to the point that just like last year, some of them are sharing the one day that's was always used to be dedicated to just Army Navy. Now Army Navy has to share that day with the bowl games. Hopefully they'll figure something out next year, because I'm sure our current leader of this country may not be fond of that, but we'll see. We shall see. But yeah, basically in the past, after Army Navy would have their one day, to celebrate the rivalry, them fighting for our country and having a great game. Basically, the following week we would have the bowl season start, and it would have maybe 1 or 2 games. And the first game was always the California Raisin Bowl. And like I said, essentially, it would only be broadcast, back and forth on Raycom or Wacom affiliated syndicated stations, and Sports Channel or Sports Channel affiliated syndicated stations. So yeah, if you were a college football enthusiast back then and even now, especially during bowl season, you knew where to find this, so you wouldn't miss out on it. And as they said there in the thing, they would heavily advertise it, especially when they got the sponsorship of the California Raisins. So yeah, it was a fun bowl, and I do remember watching it sometimes, not watching the whole game, but tuning in once in a while to see it, because it was always interesting to see these schools that back then we knew about, but they wouldn't get that much exposure. And the only exposure they would get was the fact that they would win, is that the conference championships, I think, would be televised, either ESPN or Sports Channel, if you will. They would be televised, and then they would be taken note of, during Sports Center and during the bowl selections, game specials. Because even back then they had bowl selections. Basically, then certain teams know where they were going to go. But what was interesting, though, about this, as alluded to there, is that even though it kicked off the bowl season, and all that, it was a bowl game that, as a conference champion, you wanted to play in. You wanted to, even on the small to mid-tier level, you wanted to be known for as, the champion that not only helped kick off the bowl season, but won the first bowl game of said bowl season. That's what you wanted to be known as, and that's what you were playing for. Now, unfortunately, it didn't last forever. It only lasted for about a decade, and then, as noted, it went to Las Vegas due to the fact that it lost its sponsorship, couldn't find a new sponsor, and the fact that they couldn't meet no fundraising goals. So they had to basically lose the rights, as an NCAA affiliated bowl game to Las Vegas, and Las Vegas has hosted it ever since. And essentially, when it first started in Las Vegas, it did play on the campus of UNLV, or at least the stadium associated with the campus of UNLV, Sam Boyd Stadium, before moving to Allegiant Stadium when Allegiant Stadium opened up. And ever since then, it's become a little bit more prestigious than it ever has. So obviously the question remains, could we see the California Raisin Bowl or the California Bowl make a comeback? I think we could. I look at the LA Bowl, right now at SoFi, and I think the LA Bowl could be looked at as a modern day version of the California Bowl. But there's just no conference champions, winning the conferences from the small to mid-tier level, associated with it. It's just basically, two of the best, I guess, what is it, fourth place, fifth place teams with winning records in the conferences, being part of it, or taking part in it, I should say. In this case, being Nebraska and Utah. But do I think as its own bowl game, do I think it could return? Could go back to Bulldog Stadium and all that? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely feel like there's a good chance that could happen. Because if there's one thing we know about the NCAA, if not any, college, affiliated association with sports or pro sports or whatever, the one thing they like to see the most of is money. And in today's day and age of technology, streaming, and whatnot, a lot of people could definitely watch, the California Bowl. They could definitely enjoy it, for what it is. And by bringing it into a modern era, you could make it, sort of a soft rebooted or recontinuation in legacy of the original, or just make it its own thing. Call it, maybe call it the Central Valley Classic. Because because here's what's interesting. One of the bowl games that didn't last that very long, lasted like a few years, was the Silicon Valley Classic that took place at Spartan Stadium. A lot of people could say that that was basically this state's, or at least Northern California's attempt at basically trying to continue the legacy of the California Raisin Bowl through the Silicon Valley Classic. Some would say that's the same reason, or that's the same reasoning they did the Emerald Bowl, if you will, in San Francisco and then later Santa Clara. Try to continue that legacy. But I think if we look at the Silicon Valley Classic, we can definitely say that it drew inspiration from the California Raisin Bowl due to the fact that it was taking part part of the bowl season. I'm trying to find the right word to say here, but also taking place. That's what I was trying to say. Taking place at a stadium built similarly, not as much, but similarly to Fresno State in the stadium of San Jose State. If you agree with that or not, but again, like I said, you could tell that they were trying to recapture that magic. They just weren't able to. It just felt like a knocked off version of the California Raisin Bowl, which is known as the Classic. Just like known as the Silicon Valley Classic Bowl. That's all it was. That's all it was. But outside of that, though, again, like I said, I truly believe we could see the return of this bowl game down the line. We could look at it, from that manner, if you will. We could look at it from that manner. And if there's one bowl game that could go, it'll be probably the bowl game that does the least attendance financially, viewership and financially wise. That bowl game could potentially be sacrificed. And someone might say, hey, let's take another chance of doing the California Bowl in Fresno and see what happens. A lot has changed. A lot has changed in what has been 34 years, going to be 35 years next year. A lot has changed. A lot has changed. So maybe it's a good time for them to make a return. We'll see. But it has quite the legacy. It really does. It really does have quite the legacy. And, I for one wouldn't be against it coming back. I think honestly, you could go back to its roots if you were to do that and allow it to have conference tie-ins. You could do that. You could do that. Like, for example, we know the Sun Belt, could be looked at as this, generation's equivalent of the WAC conference, the Big West WAC conference. We could look at it like that. So we could say, hey, why not place the winner or the loser of the Sun Belt Conference into the game, and then there you go. You'll have a place for them to go. And then let's say you say, okay, then they face the loser of the MAC championship. There you go. So, and also, of course, it would have to depend on the records and all that and everything. But still, the runners-up could kick off the bowl season by doing that. I think it would work. So, yeah, basically, I just wanted to come on and talk about that because we are entering bowl season in a few days. And yeah, again, I think it could make a comeback, and I do believe you see the influence it's had. on other bowl games even today. You see the influence it has on the Myrtle Beach Bowl with the way it's doing things, the conference champion tie-ins, and so on. You've seen what it's done inspirationally throughout, the existence of the bowl seasons, like the debut and defunctness of the Silicon Valley Bowl, the evolution of the Las Vegas Bowl. Somewhat of you got somewhat of the legacy tied to the Humanitarian Bowl and everything. So, on that Humanitarian Bowl, but the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, it used to be known as the Humanitarian Bowl. You see all of this, and you can definitely tell that it definitely left a legacy, and I think it does deserve a chance to come back, and have a little bit more of a modern take on it and all that, and maybe, give a constellation to whoever loses, let's say whoever loses, let's say the Sun Belt Conference Championship and the, MAC Championship. Keep that keep that history kind of tied there, the MAC history, but this time it's the runner-up in the conference championship that goes to kick off the bowl season in Fresno. But that's all we wanted to say, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are. Comment down below, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, and share the video. Also, click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere, outside of YouTube, and to support me outside of YouTube as well. But guys, give me your thoughts. Do you think a bowl game like this should have an opportunity to come back with a modern take? And do you remember the bowl game itself? Remember watching it, attending it? Let me know. And until then, I am out.